back into the Letterman Lounge. It's Matt Parker on the other side. It's Spencer Holbrook. We're going to talk Ohio State recruiting. Matt, how does that sound?
That sounds like both a hoot and a holler, especially since it apparently snowed overnight. Um,
A lot.
yeah, I said this to a friend of mine. It could be 80 degrees tomorrow, and I would be happy. At 26, I've decided I'm a snowbird. I need to be one.
Yeah, well, Ohio State is slated to host a massive junior day on Friday, Saturday, just the weekend in general. The vibes are immaculate right now for the program, and now it's going to dump snow. So we'll see how that works out, see how it goes for everybody involved. But the Buckeyes are excited about what they're bringing in this weekend. Matt, we're not entirely here to just talk about that, but we'll talk about it a little bit.
No, there's a lot happening with the Ohio State football program. That's for sure.
So let's talk about it, man. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what didn't go right for Ohio State before we get into what is going right for Ohio State. First of all, Bill O'Brien's going to be the new offensive coordinator. That's now official for Ohio through Ohio State. Letterman Monroe confirmed that news on Thursday. Ohio State made it official on Friday. That means Corey Dennis is out as the quarterback's coach. He's going to remain with the program in a yet to be determined role. That obviously has an impact on recruiting. It obviously leads into the first order of discussion, which is the bad news, is that Jared Curtis, the 2026 number one overall prospect in the country, according to some services, he is not visiting Ohio State this weekend after a traveling snafu, you could call it, I guess. And now he's been rumored to be a Georgia lean at this point. He's going to be at Georgia. I think he's going to go to Oregon as well, right? I could be wrong. What do you know about the – we're just going to set the table here. What do you know about the Jared Curtis recruitment and the cancellation of the visit that was supposed to happen this weekend?
Yeah. Well, got to give credit where credit is due. Our Alex Gleitman, either last night or this morning, reported that the Curtis visit was off for this weekend. And it was sounding like it was because of the weather, driving from Nashville or flying from Nashville, rather, to Columbus, Ohio, just wasn't in the cards, which is fine. Rather safe than sorry, of course. Ohio State's campus is still going to be here, rain, snow, shine, whatever. So I understand it. But before we hopped on, on the Twitter sphere, if you will, I saw that Steve Wiltfong of 24/7 reported that Bill O'Brien, one of his first recruiting stops is to Nashville to see Jared Curtis, which is pretty significant, I would say. Um, First day on the job, and you're doing the thing, which is exactly what you would expect. I mean, that's the exact reason why Ryan Day made this hire. The guy's experienced, the guy knows what he's doing. He doesn't need his hand held and like how to be an offensive coordinator at Ohio State. Like you couldn't find a more experienced person to be the offensive coordinator at Ohio State. So if his first stop really is in Nashville, Tennessee, to see 2026 quarterback Jared Curtis, I think that eliminates kind of some of the worries, I guess, or the speculation that a once Ohio State lean is now a Georgia lean, and uh, I'm pretty sure maybe some folks are wondering why are we talking about 2026 when 2025 is the focus right now, and that's because the sooner you get a quarterback, the better, because that's what you're building around ultimately, and the sooner you can get that centerpiece for your class and build around that, the better. And now that Julian Lewis has reclassified from 2026 to 2025, uh, Jared Curtis, by all counts and all recruiting services, is the top rated quarterback in 2026. And Ohio State's going after him hard. The Buckeyes have taken care of 2025 with Tavian St. Clair. And even with Julian Lewis now reclassified, I don't expect Ohio State to make a move there. They have their guy for 2025. That's why it was so important for Curtis to be on campus this weekend. And I expect that, I mean, he is allegedly nearing a decision. I still like Ohio State right now, even though he's not visiting. And Ohio State is hosting more recruits on campus February 3rd. So if Curtis and his family can wait, another 3 weeks or so, looking at the calendar, that gives Ohio State time to figure out how to work the existing staff, to figure out how to work with Bill O'Brien work with them, figure everything out, and then boom, they can go get their guy in 3 weeks from now. So it'll be interesting to see how it all shakes up. But I still like Ohio State right now. We'll see what happens.
From Bill O'Brien and Jared to Bill O'Brien and Julian, I think it would be a little irresponsible of us not to at least touch on the recruiting side of the recent transfer portal addition of Julian Sayin, the number one quarterback in the country for the class of 2024, officially in the transfer portal as of 12:36 p.m. We're recording this live. I just see it now. Before he went in the portal, there's no reason to speculate. Now he's officially in the portal. He's a 2024, has never played anything college football wise, maybe done a couple workouts at Alabama, but probably not even. I still consider this a recruit.
Yeah.
A recruit, not a player. So I guess the Letterman Lounge is the right place to talk about it. This is kind of spur of the moment, Matt, but that's what live television is for. Welcome to live TV.
Live YouTube, yeah.
Ohio State, according to not Letterman Row. Wow, he could be at Letterman Row if he wanted to. On threes, Pete Nakos, the foremost NIL expert on all things NIL and transfer portal, says Ohio State and Georgia are teams that have emerged in the re-recruitment of Julian Sayin now that Nick Saban is out the door at Alabama. This would have impact on Bill O'Brien as a recruiter because Julian Sayin committed to Bill O'Brien as the offensive coordinator at Alabama. It would have an impact on Tavian St. Clair. It would have an impact on Aaron Nolan. It would have an impact on Jared Curtis and Ryan Day. I just wanted to make sure that we cover that briefly, that like this is a thing that is worth monitoring at this point.
Yeah, I mean, first off, if that's what Pete Nakos is reporting, I'll listen to it. But secondly, when you go back and you look at the recruitment on the trail as a high schooler of Julian Sayin, Dylan Raiola decommitted from Ohio State on December 14th, I think it was. No, December 17th. That was the date. Yeah, December 17th, 2022. And literally like maybe a day or 2 days after Ohio State offers Julian Sayin. So they quickly shifted priority to, I mean, when they had no quarterback for 2024, Julian Sayin was the guy that they initially wanted. And by all counts, he's going to end the 2024 cycle as the number one quarterback in the country. I saw him at the Elite 11 this past summer, and I told you this before we started recording. He's the best quarterback, the best high school quarterback I've ever seen in person. I mean, he's phenomenal. He's very good. Like he's just very good. That's my expert analysis. He's very good. Can make every single throw. His accuracy is great. Reading the field is great, etc. And now that he is officially in the transfer portal, if you're Ohio State, the way that Ohio State has taken care of business and really monitored its off season in the last 3 weeks, the Buckeyes are doing everything that they can to make sure that they have the best players on their roster. And is a guy like Julian Sayin needed? That's a question that you could ask. Certainly, I mean, I just did, but he certainly wanted. I mean, if you can improve your roster, shouldn't you do it? That's the big question. So this is all very, very new, and there's a lot of reporting that needs to go into this, which he's technically a college football player. So that's kind of in your hands, Spence, and you and Andy Backstrom on the team side. But it is very interesting. It's an interesting development and how Ohio State is going to handle this now that Aaron Noland is on campus already, the 2024 quarterback that they brought in, Tavian St. Clair, the 2025 quarterback that is committed right now. And then, just Nick Saban did a lot, man, by walking away from college football, didn't he? It's pretty impressive. One guy,
I mean,
a lot of dominoes.
Yeah, you look at the coordinator hires, you look at the uh, the new Alabama coordinator hires that have freed up 2 FBS head coaching openings, the immediate impact of Washington needing a new head coach, and then Arizona needing a new head coach, and San Jose State needing a new head coach, which meant that Buffalo and South Alabama need new head coaches, and now you're looking at other coordinators who could be on the move.
Yeah.
Ohio State still needs another defensive assistant. We'll see what happens there. Like the coaching carousel has completely reset. And if something happens a little north of Columbus, Ohio, that rhymes with Michigan, maybe we would have another round of all of this coaching movement because that's going to be wild to watch as well if something happens there. So, like, talking about recruiting right now, it doesn't feel like it comes in second, but like the national picture is changing so much right now, so
Yeah.
much. And the
And
way Ohio State's going to operate with a new athletic director, a new president, new personnel on the coaching staff, the aggression that we're seeing, like everything is changing all at once. And I think the first few minutes of the show, it was worth talking just like about a lot of these different moving parts that directly involve the Buckeyes.
yeah, and whether it directly impacts Ohio State or not, every single thing that is happening in the college football world is going to affect a Titan like Ohio State. You know,
Mhm.
um, you mentioned the the program known as Gishigan, I believe is what you said.
I said it rhymes with that. I wasn't going to be outward about who I was talking about. You can
Okay.
get the hint. You can get the hint.
Uh, I mean, anything that happens to that program is certainly going to impact anything that happens down here in Columbus. And then also all these the coaching carousel directly impacts roster management and stuff like that because when a coach leaves, that opens up the portal for all of these players because if a new hire comes in, they have what 30 days to go to the transfer portal or something like that, or find a new home if something like that. Like if it doesn't work out, so right now you're seeing like Alabama is experiencing that now, Washington, now Arizona, and San Jose State, and shoot, if someone from the university at Buffalo, because it's the university at Buffalo, for all of the Mid American Conference fans here, we appreciate you. The university at Buffalo, those players now have 30 something days, 20 ish days now. I don't know what the count is. You get my point is that it's just never ending right now.
Mhm.
And that has to change eventually because there needs to be some kind of stability. But we're not going to go on a super big tangent about putting guardrails up for anything because that's no fun and it's kind of boring and no one wants to listen to anybody whine about stuff. So let's get back on track and we can talk. I see how you titled this. Buckeyes closing 2024 class out strong, set for massive junior day weekend visits. And let's start with the first part in that sentence in the 2024 class. Let's go there.
Okay. Is Ohio State going to close out the 2024 class strong after hosting in-state defensive lineman Dominic Kirks over the last week, and then also seeing him decommit from Washington, where he was committed for a long time because Kalen DeBoer, the now Alabama head coach who was at Washington, left for Alabama. Again, this all comes back to Nick Saban retiring.
Yeah.
Will the Buckeyes close with Dominic Kirks and add another key piece, potentially top 100 piece, to the 2024 recruiting class?
Yeah, I feel pretty confident in saying the Buckeyes are going to get it done with Dominic Kirks, the four-star defensive lineman out of originally from Cleveland, lives in Painesville right now, just outside of the Cleveland area, Riverside High School, where they are getting 8 to 12 inches of snow today. So a lot of snow in the Buckeye State today. Um, everyone stay safe out there, by the way. It's pretty nasty, so don't go anywhere if you don't have to. But yeah, Kirk's decommitted from Washington a week ago today, and then began his official visit to Ohio State last Saturday. Was here until Sunday, and left with the offer. So I mean, I think that's kind of telling, right? You're this late in the recruiting cycle. You're an in-state guy. Everything feels like the writing is on the wall, but it's still no decision has been made yet, whether Kirks is going to commit to Ohio State or not. USC was involved. I mean, he took an official visit to USC in December, about 2 weeks before signing day. Michigan State is trying to enter the race. I've heard things that Michigan is trying to get into the race as well. But, I really like where Ohio State stands in this recruitment right now. I haven't put in a prediction or anything. And quite honestly, I probably won't, because that's a decision that could happen today, tomorrow, Sunday, whatever. It could happen at any time, I'm expecting, especially since the February signing period is less than a month away. That's the first Wednesday in February, which I believe is the 7th. Last time I looked at a calendar, I think it's the 7th. Um, so I'm expecting Ohio State to add its third defensive lineman to the 2024 class, and Dominic Kirk's joining Edric Houston and Eric Mensa, both of which are already on campus, by the way, going through winter workouts and experiencing life as college students. The interesting thing about Dominic Kirk's, by the way, okay, is that he's about 6'5", 250-ish pounds, somewhere in there. Like, he looks the part of a defensive lineman at Ohio State. The thing is does he play outside? Does he play, defensive tackle? Probably a weak side defensive tackle if I had to put him on the inside. There's a lot of positional versatility with a guy like Dominic Kirks, who, the coaching cliche is like has a high motor and stuff like that. He just has to stay on the field, Spence. That's the biggest thing with Dominic Kirks. It's just staying healthy, making sure that I think part of staying healthy is once he gets into a college strength program, there's a lot of things that come with the strength program, and part of that is like just finding ways to stay healthy, making sure your body is as strong as possible to stay healthy, kind of prevent some injuries and stuff like that. Um, but again, this is all dependent upon, if he commits and if he signs with Ohio State, which all signs are pointing to yes. So, should that happen, Ohio State will finish the 2024 class with 3 defensive linemen signees. It'll finish with 21 overall commits. Um, and Ohio State has the number 5 class right now, according to On3. If Kirk's commits, I would be curious if they get a bump in the team updates. Like if he goes to if Ohio State goes to number 4 or something like that, I'd be curious. Either way, it'll be a top 5 class no matter what.
I think Ohio State could even get to number 3 with that commitment, depending on where the final rankings shake out. Right? Like if Dominic Kirks jumps into the top 100 after senior tape comes out, and our guy Cody Belair and our guy Charles Power talk to some evaluators who think that this guy's like Ohio State level, and the way that this game works is like if they get the right feedback from people and understand what Kirks could be, and they give him some sort of ratings bump at the end of the year, you don't know that he could even fall in the ratings for all we know. They might see the senior tape and say, "Oh, I don't know about this guy. No wonder Ohio State offered him late." Like, however they choose to do that, Ohio State could stay at number 5. They can move to number 4. I think they could even move to number 3 when I look at these rankings, because they're not much behind Texas whatsoever, and they're 1/10 of a point behind Texas. They're 1.5 tenths of a point. They're 0.15, I guess, behind, or 1 5/10 behind Oregon. So if you get, yeah, it's not a math show. We do it every time, folks. If you get the right kind of ratings increase that you see, and then you get some ratings movement elsewhere in the Ohio State 2024 class, you could see Ohio State at number 3. I don't think they're getting to number 2 or number 1, but now we got to look at Alabama without the number 1 commit in the country and Julian Sayin, and say, okay, we have to reevaluate this 2024 Alabama class.
Yeah.
And so Ohio State could move up just by proxy with Alabama falling, but they could also move up if Dominic Kirks pulls a no surprise to anybody and commits to Ohio State here in the next few days. So I'm very intrigued to where this rankings thing goes. I know Ohio State doesn't really care about the rankings, but it's so cool to see. Like, the ratings movement from all of this is interesting, and it's all back to Alabama losing Nick Saban again.
Well, it's just a big talking point, right?
Yeah.
And it's fun. Like, it's fun to look at it and just be like, oh yeah, like the Buckeyes finished here. And like, I think there's an argument to be made that this is probably the second best recruiting class that Ryan Day has brought to Columbus, behind the 2021 class.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's a big deal because the 2021 class, a lot of them are decided to stay in Columbus for their senior seasons, which is a pretty significant deal. And then this 2024 class, I mean, up and down the class is just wildly talented. Obviously, it's headlined by, Jeremiah Smith and Mylan Graham, the two five-star wide receivers. But you look at the defensive side of the ball, and this is where, and I know we talked about this before, but this is just a thought that came into my head. This is where having that, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh, having the stability on the defensive side of the ball, it's changed how Ohio State can recruit. It can go out and it can go get, a top 150 safety like Jalen McClain is. Defensive line has, had its up and downs these last couple of recruiting cycles, but like a five-star from Georgia on the defensive line is at Ohio State right now. Like he's dealing with the snow that we have right now in Columbus, and that's Edric Houston, obviously. Uh, but we don't need to go down like the entire rabbit hole of the 2024 class because we've done that so many times now. All I will say is this: if Ohio State gets a commitment from Dominic Kirks, whenever that happens, um, I think the Buckeyes will be in really good national standing, as it always is, like as they always are. So, but let's turn the page over to this here junior day that begins tomorrow. Some recruits are heading to town today. Well, there's a lot of in-state visitors, so they'll be heading to Columbus tomorrow. And I want to start off with I don't want to run through the entire guest list. Um, but I do want to talk about a few key guys. And we already talked about Jared Curtis not being here. So we have that. Go ahead.
Where can the fine folks watching this program here find the full list, Matt?
Oh, the Letterman Lounge.
The message.
Letterman Lounge message board. Which folks, I believe you can join the ever growing Letterman Row community for $1 right now.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that is correct. $1 for your first month.
It's true.
So that's 100 pennies. Flip over the couch cushions,
Mm-hmm.
4 quarters even. What is that, 20 dimes? No, 20 nickels, 10 times.
20 nickels, 10 times.
Not a math show, but that's a silver $1 if you have that. Don't spend those. Those are cool. My dad
Matt, so Jared Curtis is not showing up. So he's not going to be here, which is fine. I think they've got that ironed out. It's not an issue. If you want to go hear about that earlier in the show, I think about the 4 or 5 minute mark, we talked about Jared Curtis not making the trip. But I'm going to set you up here. You've got a list on LettermanRow.com in 3 important Ohio State targets visiting this weekend. There are 3 really big names. I have one that I think is the clear-cut top rope most important player that's going to be here. Yeah, from the top rope. And it would signal a huge win and maybe even a power shift for Ohio State back to the top of the Big Ten if it happens. I think this is just absolutely massive. I'll let you go though. I'll let you cook because this is your show, not mine. But I have an opinion of one of these guys that is really, really high.
Well, if I take your guy here by starting it off, I mean, to me, it's got to be Carter Lowe.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Who was the last offensive line coach who was a great recruiter? Listen, Justin Fry is going into Toledo, and I know it's in state, but guys, you know how Toledo is. It's as divided as possible. And Carter Lowe just watched Ohio State lose to Michigan. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, anytime Carter Lowe is the number 88 overall prospect and the number 9 offensive tackle in the On3 industry rankings. And he's heading to Ohio State this weekend. Was talking with him earlier this week and some folks in his camp, and Ohio State had the coaching brass up in Toledo last week as well. Justin Fry was there, Tony Alford was there, Brian Hartline, Corey Dennis, all 4 of them were at Toledo Whitmer last Friday to watch Lowe play his basketball game, and they all spoke with him and stuff like that. And he's returning the favor by visiting Ohio State once again. This is a guy I think the Buckeyes are going to get it done here, Spence. I mean, I understand he's an in-state prospect and stuff like that. But as you mentioned, Toledo is just a little bit different because it's closer to Ann Arbor than it is Columbus. And Michigan, this is a guy that has included Michigan in a top 5 list that's rounded out by Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee. Really, this has always been an Ohio State Michigan battle, and just the effort that Ohio State has put into Carter Lowe um, is why I think the Buckeyes are going to win this recruitment. I mean, during Ohio State's bye week last season, Ryan Day and Justin Fry went up to Toledo, watched him play, and it's a big deal when Ryan Day is inserting himself early into a recruitment. And you remember, like last football season, Ohio State was still trying to find offensive linemen for the 2024 class. So to get a head start on 2025. I mean, this is a kid that made 3 game day visits last fall. He was on campus for Western Kentucky, Maryland, and Penn State. And then he saw Ohio State play at Michigan, which the offensive line was up and down that entire game. But you look at the most up moment of the game from 2023, and to me, it's the drive where they ran the ball 12 straight times, right?
Mhm.
Like that to me, and it was capped off by Travion Henderson touchdown. Um, that to me really signaled that okay, like Ohio State is doing something. Ohio State can develop guys, and then obviously the real low of that was on the potential game winning drive where who was it? Donovan Jackson gets beat on a stunt, and the Michigan defensive lineman hits Kyle McCord's arm, which causes the interception on a Marvin Harrison post. Like that's what happened. So and Carter Lowe saw all of it, just like 20 odd something million people did on television and 100,000 there. My point
Mhm.
here is on this rant and this ramble is that Ohio State has prioritized Carter Lowe for the better part of 18 months. And you're starting to see a shift in his recruitment to where he was never a kid that really wanted to play the recruiting game, if you will. He was definitely someone that like wants to explore his options and like make sure that he has looked over everything. Um, but you come back to it, and it just all signs are pointing to Ohio State. He gets text messages from Tavian St. Clair all the time, and Eli Lee, the 2 in-state commits already for the 2025 class, and even now, a guy like Javen Boggs, who lives in Florida, the wide receiver commit, he's in Carter Lowe's ear as well. So, like to me, he is the most important visitor heading to campus this weekend, and getting a guy like him, a national prospect in your own backyard, is a big deal.
Other offensive visitors, Matt, include 2025 tight end Nate Roberts, who has a very good relationship with Keenan Bailey. We'll see if they can pull off a win with the number 5 tight end and number 117 overall prospect in the industry rankings. That's a huge recruitment. And maybe we can dive in, since we talked so much Carter Lowe here, maybe we can dive into more of the Nate Roberts of it all. Maybe following the visit, because I know that you and Alex Gleitman will be plugged in following that visit. And then the other one that you mentioned is Marquise Davis, an in-state running back who is high on Ohio State, who's high on Michigan, and this looks like another Jordan Marshall, Ohio State versus Michigan recruiting battle, except the Buckeyes weren't late to the party on this one, and maybe they have a better chance with Marquise Davis than they did with Jordan Marshall. Both those guys pretty critical visitors that you'll have full coverage of following those visits.
Let me say a quick note about Marquise Davis, and then we can look at
Floor is yours.
we can then switch over to the exact same story about the defensive guys. So uh, Marquise Davis. I mean, you mentioned that this is Ohio State Michigan thing, which it certainly is shaking up to be like that, but it's different from the Jordan Marshall recruitment because Ohio State isn't 6 months behind. You
Yep.
know, that's a kid where I mean, all props to Mike Hart going down to Cincinnati and taking Jordan Marshall to Michigan, and you got to give credit where credit's due. Uh, and it's different because Ohio State, I think, has I don't want to say the front runner, but like Ohio State has been running the Marquise Davis recruitment for some time now. Um, I don't expect like any knee-jerk reaction from Davis. He is certainly a kid that wants to be thorough in his process. He wants to take official visits and things like that, which he should. I encourage kids to, well, not like I don't personally encourage that, but I encourage the idea of taking visits and seeing everything, making sure that all the stones are turned over, so you know everything, right? Uh, and this is a kid. The notion on Ohio prospects is that if they have an Ohio State offer, they're just going to go to Ohio State. Well, that's not true anymore. Kids are starting to leave the state. And Marquise Davis, like, would it shock me if he decided to leave the state of Ohio and go somewhere else? Maybe a little bit, but I mean, he talks to Tennessee quite often. He talks to Georgia quite often. So this is a guy that Ohio State absolutely has to lock down. And uh, Tony Alford and Brian Hartline were at Cleveland Heights, the high school of Marquise Davis. They were at Cleveland Heights last Friday, and now, boom! Look, Marquise Davis is coming to Columbus a week later. Like, those things matter. That matters. That adds up. So the more FaceTime Marquise Davis gets with the Ohio State program, the better. The better I feel about the recruitment personally. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's just a big weekend for Ohio State in general. But Ohio State, I think, has used the Jordan Marshall recruitment as kind of an example of how not to slow play talent that is in the state, and if it hasn't, like, it should use that as an example. Marquise Davis is a guy that, like, should be a Buckeye. So we'll see how
Mhm.
that visit goes this weekend. As you said, we'll have coverage over it. And yeah, I mean, it's a big weekend for Ohio State with a lot of in-state guys heading to Columbus.
Do you know how we started this show, Matt? With
Talking about the snow.
the snow is one thing, but how Nick Saban has changed the entire calculus of the college football globe.
Yeah.
There's a 2025 recruit who was very, very interested in what Nick Saban was telling this young man, and what Alabama had to offer as a program, and the idea of leaving Ohio to play for Nick Saban was intriguing.
I see where you're going with this.
And now Nick Saban is not in the picture at Alabama, and a new staff is there trying to salvage a lot of these relationships. Now that the greatest coach of all time is not roaming the sideline in Tuscaloosa, it's a little bit of a power shift, even for in-state guys such as four-star Cincinnati Winton Woods edge Justin Hill, the number 128 overall prospect, number 7 edge by On3, is returning to Columbus this weekend, Matt, on the heels of finding out that another contender for his services, Alabama, no longer is the Alabama he was recruited by.
Yep.
I think that's huge. And I think it's even bigger that he's coming to Ohio State directly after all of this has broken. What is the latest on Justin Hill, and how important is it that the Buckeyes are hosting him this weekend?
I mean, it's extremely important. I mean, like I said, anytime there's a national prospect in the state of Ohio who, during a contact period, during a time in the recruiting calendar where the kid can visit schools, that chooses to make the easy drive up 71 to go see Ohio State, that matters. Like, that absolutely matters, and it should matter. Um, Justin Hill, if Ohio State used the jack in its 4-2-5 defensive system, that's exactly what Justin Hill would play. He is as much of an in-between guy as you could imagine. Like, literally this fall, he spent time with his hand in the turf as a defensive end and then played linebacker as well. So, like, that's like exactly what Ohio State wants from its jack position, which is really yet to see the light of day. Well, I guess Jack Sawyer played it, but whatever. I digress, as Tim May would say. Um, but yeah, again, it's all about reading some of the tea leaves, right? Last Friday, James Laurinaitis and Tim Walton were down in Cincinnati. They were down at Winton Woods visiting with Justin Hill, and Laurinaitis got Justin Hill to visit this weekend. Justin Hill was not on the list to come, and then all of a sudden, Ohio State coaching staff heads down to Cincinnati, gets him to come up for this weekend, and Justin Hill is also supposed to visit Ohio State February 3rd. So that's a big deal. Like, I don't know how else to say it other than like that's a big deal when a priority in-state target who has all of the national attention that he could possibly want. Like, I know it's a new coaching staff at Alabama, but that doesn't mean they're going to stop recruiting. A very talented football player from Ohio. Uh,
Mhm.
Justin Hill has a lot of interest in Oregon, and Dan Lanning and the Ducks, which sounds like a really bad cover band, by the way. Uh,
Mhm.
Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks, they have a very high interest in one another. And as a matter of fact, Justin Hill is heading to Eugene in between the two Ohio State visits. So like that's a big deal. I think ultimately what it's going to come down to is can Ohio State show Justin Hill that the position they're recruiting him for exists, right? Like that's the biggest thing. And I don't know if Ohio State can do that right now, just because it's shown that it hasn't. But what it has shown is that it's an elite defense. It's one of the most elite defenses in college football, and it took a year to get there.
Mhm.
So I think that's significant. That's my word of the day, I suppose, is significant. Uh, but but the fact that all it took was one recruiting visit by James Laurinaitis on the road tells me two things. One, uh, I I would kind of campaign for him to get a promotion so he can do this more often for Ohio State. And then two, it just goes to show the power of having him in that role. You know, all it took was one visit for him to his high school uh, to get a kid to come visit. I'm not saying that's going to happen every single time, but like talking with some prospects, throughout the 2025 cycle, a guy like TJ Alford, wants James Laurinaitis to get that promotion. And TJ Alford, probably the top linebacker target right now for Ohio State out in Vero Beach. It's an Ohio State Miami battle. And, I'm just really interested to see. I believe there's one more coaching spot open on the Ohio State coaching staff right now. So we'll see what happens there. Right, there's still one more spot open, so we'll see what happens there. Um, Sounds like another spot's going to be opening in the press release that Ohio State sent today about Bill O'Brien officially being announced as the OC. Corey Dennis in a yet to be named role. To me, that sounds like he is going to be taken off the part of the 10 assistant coaches, um, which means another spot will open.
No, that's going to be filled by O'Brien.
Oh, okay, gotcha. See, look, this is why I just cover recruiting. I don't need all the logistics of worrying about what you do. I'm just a simple man. Let me watch huddle tape all day.
Grinding huddle tape.
Some days that's all I do. I it's a nice life. It's a nice life. Some of the music huddle tapes though absolutely stinks.
Yeah. Matt, the other two guys in the list on that top three defensive guys, not that they're bad prospects, not that they're not worth talking about, but they are 2026s.
Oh, you got to restart this introduction, brother. Both of these dudes are absolute like studs, and they are
Yeah.
worth talking about.
No, I completely agree that they are studs. It is harder for me to talk about 2026 when 2025, especially when like you're calling it a junior day, like these kids are still juniors in 25, like but like Albert Hill, the 2026 corner, and Sincere Johnson
Yeah.
are absolute studs and will be Ohio State caliber and are Ohio State caliber. Like, take a commitment from them, like, whenever they're ready. And I think Ohio State is in good position for both of them. They're visiting this weekend. And to close this out, if you have any thoughts on those two guys.
Yeah. Albert Hill is already a national level prospect out of Akron Archbishop Hoban, which really just has like a bunch of talented dudes in that program right now. Like Eli Lee plays at Hoban. He's committed to Ohio State, the 2025 linebacker. Sam Greer, the 2026 offensive tackle, who is also heading to Ohio State this weekend. That's significant. That really is my word of the day, man. And I promise I don't have a word of the day calendar. I have a peanuts calendar. So like, you know, little inside peek there. Albert Hill, I mean, he just got an offer from USC. He's close to 20 offers as a 2026 prospect, which is a big deal. Uh, the Midwest is already on Albert Hill, like Ohio State, Wisconsin, Michigan. For the sake of argument, Penn State, Notre Dame, I think, has offered him. So, like, the Midwest programs are paying attention. It remains to be seen when the SEC kind of wakes up and is like, oh, here's a dude, and he also plays in the state of Ohio, so like he really is a dude. Sincere Johnson is a bit interesting to me because his recruitment hasn't really taken off yet. But for those that don't know, Sincere Johnson plays at Cleveland Glenville, and like that kind of should tell you everything else you need to know about the guy, right? Just an absolute football player. What Ted Ginn Sr. does with talent up in Cleveland Glenville and what he has done with talent up there, uh, that's a Hall of Fame coach, 100%. That's a Hall of Fame coach in my book. And that Glenville pipeline has totally reopened to Ohio State with Arvell Reese and Bryce West and Damarian Witten. Uh, all three Ohio State Buckeyes with Reese finishing close to finishing his first year at Ohio State because he was a summer enrollee. And then Bryce West, who has been on campus for 2 weeks now. Damarian Witten is finishing out his senior year at Glenville. Actually, I think he just posted a double-double in his basketball game, or maybe a triple-double. I don't know. I just saw the stats on the fly, so I was like, oh, kid's a baller. Good for him. But Sincere Johnson, the 2025 linebacker, I really like him a lot. Doesn't have, like I said, his recruitment hasn't really blown up yet. And I think if he hits the camp circuit this summer, it will, just because you're exposed to college coaches and stuff like that, and then your name gets out there and things like that. Not that Glenville kids have any problem getting their name out there, because that coaching staff does a really good job of recruiting college coaches to look at the Glenville kids. I mean, they do a really good job of that. Definitely some development that needs to happen, but you know what? He's only a sophomore in high school and played, and I believe started on a state championship team. So like, that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
My one thing about him is that like he has great vision. Like he can dissect a play very quickly. Which to do that as a sophomore in high school, pretty cool. Like it's cool to. This is why I like spending time on Huddle all day, is because you just watch kids tape and you see them grow like, week to week. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend I'm an expert at watching tape, because I'm certainly not. But when you do it all day, sometimes you kind of pick up on seeing kids develop. So that's why I got these bags under my eyes. I just watch Huddle all day. So I mean, Ohio State's excited about him. That's my information from folks at the Woody. Ohio State's excited about what Sincere Johnson can grow into, and anytime you have an in-state guy that could be something, it's certainly worth following. This is the same feeling Ohio State had about Eli Lee, and sure enough, he turned into an Ohio State caliber player. Offered 2 weeks later, commits. So anytime you have that possibility, it's something that Ohio State has to follow, which is why Sincere Johnson's visiting Ohio State this weekend. So
Matt Parker, premium ball knower, because he grinds Huddle tape hours upon hours every single day. If you want all of Matt's coverage of this 2025 Junior Day in 2024, head to lettermanrow.com right now, where you can get all of that coverage, $1 for your first month. That's right, $1 for your first month to get all of Matt's recruiting coverage, all of Alex Gleitman's coverage. Andy Backstrom, Tim May, the 40-year veteran, and I will be over on the team side covering all of it as Bill O'Brien comes to Columbus to become the offensive coordinator. Corey Dennis shifts into a new role. Matt Guerrieri, new safeties coach with other duties to be assigned later. Buckeyes still have a position coach opening. We're chatting about it now at the Letterman Lounge message board, how the Buckeyes might fill that opening. We've got some intel over there. Matt's got some intel on the recruiting side at all times on the Letterman Lounge message board. Again, $1 for your first month. Come join us. Come join the party. We're having a lot of fun over there. But until then, We'll see you guys back here next week for another edition of the Letterman Lounge. See you guys in the Letterman Lounge message board, and we'll see you at lettermanrow.com.